Welcome back into another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast. I am your co-host Corey Kinnan alongside James Foster here. We're going to do a little Dafter draft action. It's been probably a month since we've done a Dafter draft, so it's time to dive back into one of these bad boys and knock this thing out. We've got 5 different Dafter drafts here, so we're ready to roll, man. James, how are you feeling today?
Feeling good. Yeah, still been plenty of hot takes. We just haven't formally formatted them in a Dafter draft. So excited to get back into that.
For sure, for sure. Do you think we should have a little bit of Thanksgiving food conversation? What's your go-to side and your go-to dessert before we dive to?
So
Maybe it
go
should
to,
be a Dafter draft of some sort.
go to sides. I guess my main thing with sides, my two favorite sides are mac and cheese and cornbread. But
Mm.
my main thing is that the cornbread can't be plain. Like there's got to be some kind of vegetable or something like inside it to give it a little bit of texture. And the mac and cheese, it has to be breaded. Like none of the glorified, microwave mac and cheese
Yeah.
type of stuff. So I'm very persnickety when it comes to those two sides, but those are definitely my go-to. Dessert, my family makes strawberry pretzel salad, which sounds disgusting, but it's actually incredible. And so that's for Christmas and Thanksgiving. That's my go-to dessert.
I love it. I love it. I was just I grew up more of a traditional guy, like I think we had always had turkey and ham, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I know there's some families that are really split between the two. Um, I'm a big fan of the green bean casserole with the fried
Yeah.
onion, crispy onions on top. Big fan of green bean casserole. And then I this might be a hot take. I'm an apple pie truther over pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving.
Okay, so we never do apple pie, but that needs to be a suggestion because I prefer apple pie over pumpkin pie 10 times out of 10.
Oh yeah. Throw a scoop of ice cream on that bad boy, you're ready
Yep.
to roll. That's a fun little Thanksgiving conversation. Let's dive in here. Let's talk about some stuff, and let's start out with the college football playoffs because the new seeding just dropped today, as we're like right before we're recording this episode. Um, so as it sits right now, we'll go through the top 16 because really that's where the implications kind of stop. Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3, Georgia 4, Texas Tech 5, Oregon 6, Ole Miss 7, Oklahoma 8, Notre Dame 9, Alabama 10, BYU 11, Miami 12. So those are the 12 teams. Not technically, because Tulane is the highest G5. So Tulane's up in there as well. And then an ACC team has to make it in. So in this case, the last two out then would be Alabama, BYU sitting at 10 and 11 because Miami's the only ACC school, and then Tulane is the group of 5. And then 13 Utah, 14 Vandy, 15 Michigan are kind of like where the implications stop there. First Dafter draft here, James. 5 SEC schools will make the college football playoffs.
So I'm gonna go draft on this, and it's partially just playing the odds like
Mm-hmm.
on ESPN. I mean, there are 5 teams with a greater than 68% chance of making the playoffs, and you look at Texas A&M, Georgia are pretty much locks. You got Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Oklahoma plays LSU. Alabama plays Auburn this weekend. So obviously, it comes down to those games because I think if one of those teams lost, then you would be looking at 4 potentially. Because I just don't know about the argument for Texas really holding any weight. But
The
I would
only
probably
argument
draft
for
that.
okay, so the only argument for Texas holding weight is if they beat Texas A&M this weekend, they would skyrocket.
Yeah.
It would still take. Who is Georgia's one loss against? What am I tripping on here?
Um, uh, Alabama,
Is it
right?
old? It is Alabama. You're right.
Yeah.
Um, and I also think if Georgia's second loss is versus a 23rd ranked Georgia Tech, which is their rivalry game, that could tank them. As it stands right now, 4 are in with BYU in Alabama. Those last 2 teams out, even though Alabama and BYU are 10 and 11, you have to make room for that ACC school at 12. And I guess that would only force one team out. So BYU would be out. So yeah, right now 5 are in. Right now we're out because with BYU sitting at 11, BYU is going to have to win the Big 12 to make the playoffs. If they lose against Texas Tech in the Big 12 playoff like championship game, they're not going to make it. So I think they're kind of setting this up for 5 SEC teams and 1 Big 12 team to make the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to draft this as well. Again, what could be the wrench though? I mean, Texas beating Texas A&M would throw a massive wrench in this whole thing. Assuming all of these other schools win still. I mean, and Oklahoma's playing bedlam against basically an FCS version of Oklahoma State. Ole Miss is playing Mississippi. Like, these are not games that these teams should lose.
Well, Oklahoma plays LSU.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
But again, LSU is
right, like a shell of themselves. I mean, they stumbled to the finish line against Western Kentucky.
Right. And again, I think Indiana could lose. Then they're not going to lose to Purdue, but I think they could lose to Purdue, even whiff on the college. Or wow, actually, losing to Purdue would probably drop them all the way out. But I mean, leveraged at 2. That's a pretty strong leverage. So I think.
I mean, I don't think Indiana. You think Indiana would be out with 1 loss?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think even if they lose to Purdue, yeah. But it looks like the committee's leveraging in 3 Big 10 schools right now, 5 SEC schools. That's sitting at 8. They're leveraging in Notre Dame, obviously, 9. You have to put in an ACC, Big 12. That's 10, 11, and then the G4 school. So I think they're leveraging in 5 schools from the SEC one way or the other here. Yeah. So I'm gonna draft this as well, that we're gonna have 5 SEC schools in the college football playoffs. Now, which 5, that could change if Texas does something here to Texas A&M this weekend. That could get a little wonky, but as it stands right now, yeah, I like this. All right.
I personally would be pretty against Texas making the playoffs.
Yeah. So we'd have to let me pull up the SEC standings real fast because they're only a 2-loss team, and if they beat
they have 3
A&M,
losses.
A&M would still just be a but a 2-loss in the SEC.
Oh.
With one of those losses being against the number 1 team in the nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would still be tough to even put him in over Oklahoma. Yeah, it would be tough to leverage that. Would be tough to leverage that. But they do have that win over Vandy, who's ranked ahead of them. But yeah, I mean, Vandy's probably on the outside looking in anyway. But yeah, I think we discussed that ad nauseum, and I like where we sit with that. Next one here, after draft, James. Caleb Banks, defensive tackle out of Florida, who just missed the last 10 weeks, came back against Tennessee. I thought played really well. Will be the first player from the state of Florida drafted in the 2026 NFL draft.
So this really comes down to how do you stack Reuben Bain Jr., Francis Moanoa, and Caleb Banks. I would personally stack them Banks, Bain, Moanoa.
Interesting.
But I think the gap between Bain and Moanoa is shrinking, and that's less to do with Moanoa really rising and more to do with Bain falling. But I rewatched Caleb Banks' tape from last year today just to finish my evaluation because I hadn't watched him in months. And just getting eyes on him again, I think that definitely raised my confidence in him, even though I think he is a little bit unpolished. I mean, the hands are so powerful. He is a lot more sturdy in the run game than I remember. And I think that I would probably say that if I had to guess, Caleb Banks goes top 15. I think there's a chance he goes top 10. And if he's not that he's necessarily building his resume with 2 or 3 games at the end of the season, but just showing that he's back to full strength, and that kind of removes the injury concern and the injury, tax from his grade. I would draft this, even though it is probably going out on a limb a little bit.
Okay. As my board sits, I would draft it. My board goes Moanoa, Banks, Bain. in terms of the three players there. I've really been turned off by Bane's last few outings, last 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm starting to even question the physical tools a little bit, which is concerning to me. But I would have it Moe Noah, Banks, and Bane. I would view Moe Noah as a guard. I don't know if the NFL does, because I would have viewed Will Campbell as a guard last year too, and the NFL didn't, and still drafted him 4th overall. Again, we're talking about a league that's starred for offensive line play. So I ultimately think that he's probably going to get the chance to fail outside first, before like being told to kick inside.
Right.
Even if I evaluate him as a guard,
He's gonna end up for me in the same tier as Will Campbell, which is like best as a guard, but like try him at tackle.
yeah,
So they're like Wyatt Milam or Cage Casey, for
those are
example.
guards.
These
Yeah.
are college tackles that it's like I'm not even really considering. I wouldn't waste practice time with them at tackle. Um, and then I think that Moa Noah is in the tier where like tackle is just so important and there's such a scarcity where even if he is going to be a step down at tackle, like if he can be adequate or serviceable on the outside, you keep him there.
Yeah. And that kind of like depletion at the position at the NFL level, and how just consistently good Moino has been for 2 straight years, I think he's gonna be the first off the board in terms of players from Florida. The Banks tape's really good though this past week, and then the LSU tape is good too because I went back and I watched the LSU tape from week 3 too, and I was like, this is really good too. And his first step's even hotter in that game because I mentioned yesterday that I think he's still kind of warming up to kind of game speed a little bit after missing 10 weeks. So that's what I'm really excited to watch next week against Florida State, and see what happens here. Um, but I'm going to adapt it, and I'm going to go Moe Noah, Banks, then Bane, because that's just how my board stacked. Moe Noah at 7, Banks 11, Bane 15. So there's a 4-player gap between each of those players there. So for me,
So that's a daft.
I'm going to daft that one. Yeah, I'm going to daft that one for now. All right, we're going to move on to another player and where they're projected to go versus where we might think they'll go. And we're going to talk about Washington wide receiver Denzel Boston. This is on the opposite end of the spectrum here, James. After draft, Denzel Boston does not go top 50 in the 2026 NFL draft.
You want to lead off with this one since I've started the other two?
Yeah, I think I'm going to daft it, but I have way more concerns about the player than I want to.
Yeah.
Again, 50 players have to go top 50, no matter what kind of grade we have on them. And so that plays into it a little bit. I do think some teams are going to be terrified of the Keon Coleman thing. Now, I think that Boston has a bit more vertical juice than Keon Coleman did at Florida State. I think Keon Coleman was a much smoother athlete, but I do think Boston can stride it out on the vertical plane. And then his stems on the vertical plane are pretty good and pretty detailed. It's those like harsher 45-degree angle routes that he can't sit on. Like he cannot sink his hips on those more sharp routes. But I've seen him run some pretty steep speed outs, or when that speed's built up, he really can't decelerate much at all. And that terrifies me. Like these big bodied receivers just aren't my cup of tea because like name who you think are like the top, like as an exercise, I'm not asking you to do on the podcast right here, but like name the top 10 wide receivers you think that are like, who are the top 10 wide receivers in the NFL, and do any of them look like Denzel Boston? And the answer is like pretty firmly no. But again, I don't want to hold that too harshly because like he's got the same body type as Jeremiah Smith, and we're going to talk about Jeremiah Smith as the top player in the draft next year, and rightfully so. So like that doesn't hold all of the weight, but you have to be able to be incredibly dynamic and well-rounded at that size to be like, in my opinion, to feel really good about you as a player. And I don't think like, I think Denzel Boston's vertical speed is average plus to plus, but not like elite or like he can consistently take the top off. Definitely not a 3-level the field route runner. And so that kind of worries me. I'm gonna daft this. I do think he goes top 50, but I wouldn't want to draft him if it were my team.
Yeah, I would agree with that in the sense that I draft kind of the sentiment that he's gonna go later, maybe than top
Yeah,
25 where he is in consensus. But when I try to think about 50 players in this class that would go ahead of him, I don't know if I can do that.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I think the speed is probably average plus. I think he's definitely a more detailed route runner than Keon Coleman. Like to me, what especially turned me off about Keon Coleman's tape at Florida State was not only just that he lacked the burst, but how how lacking in like nuance and salesmanship his routes were. I think that Boston does a better job of that, but a lot of his production, if you just squint, it kind of looks like Eli Stowers, like in the way that it's like over routes, it's play action leak, and like it's kind of a tight end route tree in a lot of games. Um, and yeah, just I wonder about him stacking press man on the outside in the NFL. Um, I think he's more likely to just be a solid, reliable starter, probably.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that people would want to draft Denzel Boston to be that dominant X receiver, that dominant ball winner. And I would feel more comfortable drafting Denzel Boston as a player that you could probably do some power slot stuff with because he does it at Washington, and that you would make kind of that sacrificial X
Yeah.
to get your Z and your slot better mismatches, is how I would draft Denzel Boston. Um, Kind of like a Cedric Tillman type player.
Right.
Um, is kind of how I would view Denzel Boston. All right, moving on here. Daft or draft, James. 2 corners go in the top 10. And this leaves nuance to open up the conversation about which 2 corners, the one who hasn't played all season, but we had really high summer grades on. Does he still go top 10? Or do some of the other risers, do they get up there? Those kind of conversations.
So I will daft this. I think Jermod
Mhm.
McCoy does go top 10. And to me, it's just hard to see a team taking Mansour Delane, or I don't want to say hard to see. I could see teams being scared to take Mansour Delane in the top 10 with his lack of speed, even though I think he's an outstanding player outside of that, and so he would be in that 12 to 16 range probably. But
Where
overall,
would
I
you
would
put
daft it.
over under 4.53 40-yard dash on Delane?
I would say I would say maybe like a 4.51, 4.52.
Okay, so under. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do here real fast is go back to the 2021 NFL draft, and which was probably the most talented corner draft we've had in a while. And in that class, and again, 4 quarterbacks went in the top 10. So like that, or 3 quarterbacks went in the top 10. So that 4 in the top 11. So that weighs things down a little bit. And we did have 2 corners go with Horn at 8 and Surtain at 9. This is not a Horn and Surtain type class. If McCoy played the whole season, maybe, but I would agree that I'm going to daft this as well. And I do think McCoy is going to be that one corner, but I think it's going to be closer to 10 than it is to 5
Yeah.
as well. Um, yeah. And again, even looking like the 2022 class with Stingley and Sauce, like how would you stack these guys up to Stingley and Sauce? Like you probably wouldn't.
Right.
Maybe McCoy, if he was healthy and he played a whole season, you might feel comfortable putting him in that tier of a player. But yeah, I'm gonna daft that two corners go because I think Delane would be the second one there. I mean, Brandon Cisse is kind of coming on here late as well. After Dane put him in his top 25, um, I still think Delane would be that second corner, and I agree with you there that 2 in the top 10 feels very unrealistic.
Yeah, I think like I've got Delane 20. I think if I had to predict where he went, like agnostic of team, I would say again 15, 16. And I think
Yeah,
McCoy, like you said, if he had just copy and paste last year's tape again, I think that you could probably put him in the Stingley sauce conversation, especially considering that Stingley own, like McCoy, actually very similar to McCoy, where it was basically 1 year of really really good tape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So last year, counting Travis Hunter as a corner, he was the only one that went top 10, and then the next one didn't come off the board until 20 with Jade Barron. 2024, Quinyon was the first one off the board at 22, and then Nate Wiggins at 30. Or Terrion at 24 as well. It just feels like the NFL is kind of kicking corner towards like that back end of the first round now too, a little bit. So, drafting that. The last one here, this one's pretty fun. This comes from Cam from our Discord. He comments on a lot of YouTube stuff as well. Cam, we appreciate you. After draft, James, the NFL adding a developmental league will enhance offensive line play around the league, because we've had so many conversations on this podcast about how offensive line play at the NFL level is very bad, and it's pretty bad at the college level too. Like, it's catching up at the college level too. So after draft on that.
So definitely draft. It's hard to say after draft for this one, because I guess the real question would be how much. Like, obviously it's going to help. And I mean, the first part, I think, is there are two main areas where I see, actually, really, I see every aspect of O-line play it helping, but mainly focusing on pass pro. Like, a lot of offensive linemen in college they don't have the time, and a lot of times the staff doesn't have the knowledge to like teach this extensive set of hand techniques that you're going to need to be able to use in the NFL to survive. And so, like, if you look at LSU offensive line, for example, they will pretty much exclusively outside hand punch their tackles. Landon Tingwall, who was a Penn State offensive lineman, was talking about how Penn State's O-line coach is super like archaic about the punches that he teaches. Like, doesn't let them use independent hands, for example. Like, so the development is whereas in the NFL, like, if you show up in the NFL and let's say that Myles Garrett is watching tape on the rookie tackle that he's about to face, and he pulls up his tape, and every single play he's outside hand punching. Like, Myles Garrett can flip through 10 plays and then turn off his iPad, because it's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna swipe your outside hand every play. That's easy work right there. So, like, you've got to be able to flash bait, to outside hand punch. Like, you've got to be able to use everything to counter these people who are elite athletes and are studying you at such a higher level. So hand usage, I think, is the big thing, where you would get kind of like a sandbox mode where you can try out new techniques that you aren't really you don't have experience with in live action. I think I won't spend as much time, but the other two things would be like set points, just because a lot of times, you're not being asked to set. If you're playing in a super like gimmicky offense, you're not really being asked to pass set. And then, even though it would be like against a lower caliber competition, just facing something like an NFL bull rush, just to like get reps against power, against, like, compared to some of the competition that these guys face. I think those would be the three main things.
Yeah, agreed. I like, I'm going to draft this because it would obviously help to have a developmental league at every position across the board, but specifically at offensive line play. But going through the list of offensive linemen that were signed from the UFL to the NFL this past year, which I just did while you were talking, weren't a lot of notable names, and I'm not quite sure exactly how many of those guys are on NFL rosters.
Yeah.
So at the same time, like, yeah, I think it would help, but like, every NFL team also has practice squad players, and probably at least 2 to 3 offensive linemen on their practice squad who are going against NFL pass rushers every day in practice as well. So, like,
Yeah.
that developmental aspect still exists at the NFL, and
Like, do we
we
think
don't.
there would be one new good starter that would come from this?
That's what I was trying to find when I was scrolling. I was like, is there one player that I recognize that would even come through and like has like even a little bit of spot starting experience that I couldn't nail one down. So, like, Yasir Durant was the name that I recognized the most out of every player that was signed from the UFL to the NFL.
I think the best
to the 90-man roster. Yeah.
I think the best like realistic, avenue for this to have some sort of tangible outcome would be not like the UDFAs and 7th round picks that you just kind of stick there and like you're going to get a bunch of these guys that emerge. Like I don't think that's realistic, but when you draft somebody that has, first round traits but just needs experience, this is a place, that this kind of league would allow you to play them. Like I'm thinking about Josh Connerly. Like if he could just have a redshirt season, almost, if he could have just had a redshirt season in this kind of league, or like, I mean, one of the players that I would have said would be like Kingsley Suamatia last year, but he's really broken out this season, and done that without a developmental league. So, yeah, I do think as to a certain extent, it's like the players that have it are gonna be good, regardless of what the support structure looks like.
Right. I would agree with that as well. All right, man. We worked through 5 after drafts right there. We did that in quick order as well. So we will be back again, not on Thanksgiving. On Friday, we'll post the episode of the Week 14 bold predictions and whatnot. So stay tuned for that. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Again, we won't put an out episode on Thanksgiving, but we do appreciate you, listeners. We are thankful for you, and have a great holiday. This has been another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast.